How's it going, guys? We're those racing guys, and today we're going to be working on my 2016 ND Club Miata. The current setup that I have on this car is for suspension. I have the stock Bilsteins with some lowering springs as well as sway bars from Roadster Sport. Now, it's pretty good setup right now. It's super flat and everything, but the big problem is as soon as I put in bucket seats on this car, it actually started riding kind of rough because of how stiff it is. The suspension itself is a little bit crashy. You can kind of expect that with anything lowered, but today we're going to try and fix that with some Ohlins coilovers. Now the Ohlins should help smooth out the ride and basically make this handle kind of more like an exotic sports car. So first off, we're going to take this and go get some initial driving impressions with how the suspension is set up right now. Alright, so we're out here at our undisclosed testing canyon, just trying to get a feel for how the stock suspension with the lowering springs feels. Dealing with a little bit of traffic, so we're not going to be able to push it too much, but we should be able to get a good feel for these at least, to kind of give a good impression of what we think of these versus what we're going to think of the Ohlins once we get them on. I'm definitely noticing that's always kind of been an apparent thing with once I got both the lowering springs and then the sway bars installed. Even though this is a pretty good setup and it's very planted and stuff, you feel every little bump. And that's kind of been the issue, is especially where we live, where the roads aren't so great, is anytime you go over any road that's less than pristine, it can be a bit crashy. Can set you off quite a bit. With our initial impressions completed, we headed back to the garage and got started working.
Alright guys, so first we're going to break loose the lug nuts, then we're going to jack up the car.
The jack stands between those two protruding points.
So in order to get to the tops of the back shock struts, you actually have to pull out this panel, this carpeted panel. It's pretty easy. It's just a couple of plastic clips for the most part. A couple of push pin clips. Pop all of these guys out. If you don't want to use your nails, you can actually use a trim removal tool, because this isn't the most comfortable thing, but it works, so can't complain. So now that we pulled out all the trim and everything, and if you need to vacuum up at all, it's pretty easy to get to the back. It's just bolts here and here, or nuts that you have to pull out, and then pull out the one on the lower side of the strap down here, and you can swing it out and just drop it down, and it's out of the way. So the front's a little bit more complicated. It's a 3-bolt setup, and I actually have an aftermarket strut brace. The reason being is that if you have the stock club one, it will cover up the spot for the adjustment for the coilovers. So it's 3 bolts, drop here, and one here. The other thing that you'll probably actually want to do though is to take out the bolts for the upper A-arm. The reason being is that you're not going to be able to get this out of here without it. We're actually going to be throwing this spring compressor onto here to pull this off to swap onto the new ones to throw them in. Now you might be tempted just to, you know, do the shit you see online and undo this and watch it fly off, but it's super dangerous. So we're gonna recommend you always use the spring compressor. So if you notice on these, this is actually what's called the pillow ball mount top. So it has basically a rubber isolator on the top and the inside of this. This basically allows it so that when it's, you know, compressing and extending, that you're not getting like a harsh ride. Typically on motorsport stuff, you'll see like spherical bushings, but like I said, this is my street car, so I'm not gonna go with that route. Quick note about the installation. If you refer to the install guide, it shows this top spring perch as I am installing it here. Upon further investigation, the spring perch actually needs to be the other way around. So according to the instructions, once you get the spring on here, it's supposed to be 195 overall. So we're just going to measure this and make sure that this is adjusted right. Looks like we need to go about 5 millimeters tighter. So what comes supplied with the kit is these two forks. Basically this is for the lower collar and this one's for the larger collar. You break the lower one free and then use this one to basically hook on to adjust this to at the preload. Now once you get the preload set, to adjust the height you would actually break this one free and adjust this, but as I am not trying to go super low, show boy, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to leave it where it is for now, and we'll check it out and see if we want to adjust it after the fact. Go up top and tighten on one of them. You got it. Alright, so now we got the rear back in. The big issue that we're going to run into is that when we put the panels in place, it's going to block our ability to do adjustment. So what I have are these remote adjustment cables that bolt onto the top and allow you to relocate it onto the trim itself. I got these ones from Saki Bomb Garage. There's a couple different options though online depending on what your price range is.
Alright, Joseph here. So we just did the rear coilovers. Those went in and out really easily. Had to do some measurements. And now we're doing the front ones.
Yup, these things. So 17 millimeters, both sides. We're gonna get to taking these out, along with a bottom pin right here. And we already took that one out, but yep, gotta pull those out, and then the coilover should come right out. Keep you guys updated. Got the AR mount. Should come right out like that. Yep. If I can do it, you can do it too.
Well, we're almost done. Suspension's on. I just got the wheels mounted. I also rotated them while we were at it, just so that the tires would wear more evenly. Last thing to do is get the lug nuts on, get on the ground, torque it up, and then take it for a test drive.
Not too bad.
There we have it.
We're back to our secret undisclosed testing canyon. Spent about 4 or 5 hours for install time. We took a couple breaks to get some drinks and some food and stuff like that. And I think we could have probably knocked it out a bit faster than we ended up doing. There was a little bit of questions because Unfortunately, the instructions weren't the most clear, surprisingly, from such a big company as Ohlins. But we got it done in the end, and we're back out here. A couple things noticed, definitely, when we drove up through a couple rough spots where I'm used to the car doing more of a bounce kind of thing. It kind of just jostled over it. So it's like you could still feel the bumps, but it definitely was a lot less crashy. The other things that I'm noticing is that when we're loading up into a corner, there was a little bit of lean that you still actually got with the lowering springs, and now the car is just flat. Setting that I used to do with my NA Miata, which is to do 3/4 stiff in front and about half stiff in rear. This allows the back end to roll just a bit more, so you get a little bit better turn in. And definitely on some twisty roads like this, and even like on the uneven pavement, it definitely comes alive. So some final thoughts on it. Definitely gonna have to do a little bit more testing and everything to really feel these out, but so far they feel pretty good. Definitely feel a lot more composed over bumps and undulations and stuff like that. We'll probably give a little bit more of a update next video we put out. We still need to do some braided steel brake lines on this car, and you know, we have some other ideas coming up as well, some work for Joe's car, and probably making a couple of parts. So if you like, you know, what we're doing and everything, and want to follow along, you know, obviously like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully we'll be putting out some more exciting content. Stay tuned.